All right, you lovely people. Hello and welcome to this special 9/11 episode of Gabbin' Aloha America. Happy Anti-Independence Day, everybody. So, let's get right to it. Today's a pretty special day. Trump made a pretty funny tweet on his Twitter today saying before the event, the tallest building, or before they built the World Trade Center, the tallest building in New York was 40 Broadway or something like that. And now it's the Trade Center, and now after 9/11 it became this building again. And I was sitting here thinking, yeah, because that's what people really cared about with that event, right? Was the buildings. But anyway, enough of that. I'd really like to talk today about some of the mechanisms that allow things like that. Things like our misunderstanding of that event, and some of this other stuff happens. As well as our modern fight in the modern era for a free future humanity and free speech. So, back in September 2001, that was a pretty big deal for people. It's woken up a lot of people since then because we've realized that that sort of thing couldn't have just happened. Like, at the very least, it requires a lot of people who are looking the other way and organizing some things with military operations that happened to put planes in the air where they shouldn't be, so they didn't have enough resources to handle where they needed to be. But bigger picture here, we have people who have been controlling our politics, history, a lot of these violent events for a very long time. We're talking about probably hundreds of years here. They have more money than any country in this planet, and they crash economies. In fact, moreover, they've designed nearly every world economy to be very crashable every 8 years so they can suck more money out of it. It's some kind of genius. But with that resource, they can then fund people to cause violent acts, to go to a protest and break a window so the police can come in because now it's a riot, to do various things, to hire bots and trolls online to change our opinions, to hire people in various media networks to promote certain stories and not other ones. Money is a very powerful thing, interestingly enough. It allows you to buy a company who you don't like the sort of speech they're promoting and then fire the people you don't like within that company. It allows you to put a lot of legal pain in the butt on someone's plate if you recognize that they probably don't have a good legal defense of their own and that financial burden might cause them to stop doing whatever they're doing. Okay. Guys, I hope you've noticed by now there's a few stacks of books back here. We've got the main conspiracy here, general information, and some of it turns into conspiracy stuff here, and understanding religion, spirituality, and all that sort of stuff, which I've come to realize is kind of a conspiracy in and of itself, because there is inherent natural world truth about the way religion and spirituality happens, and there's a lot of groups that have misled people on these evils of religion, as it were. A lot of religions have been co-opted to do horrible things in their name. If you think that, for example, maybe all Muslims are horrible people, all Muslims, whatever you want to, any particular group, we're just going to say them because I think that is relevant and familiar to at least some people, whether or not you buy into it or not. I think at least you're familiar with this narrative. So, which is one of the reasons I like candidates like Tulsi Gabbard, because she's promoting people to stop being so divisive. Anyway, consider that if we have these rich people with more money than countries existent on this earth, it would not be hard for them to fund a church or an organization such as Wahhabi Islam that is a little bit more militant than most other Muslim sects that promote compassion and God's love, the same way that Christianity supposedly promotes compassion and God's love. But bottom line, whether you're talking about the Catholic Church doing an inquisition, or people misinterpreting a different version of the Quran to hurt people, it's really easy to do something bad in the name of a group and then try to blame that whole group. We as people need to stop following for this nefarious form of identity politicking and recognizing that there are a lot of good Christians out there, there are a lot of good Muslims out there, there are a lot of good Jewish people out there, a lot of good Hindus out there, a lot of good Buddhists out there. You may worship the flying spaghetti monster. I personally worship this higher connection that we all have. Sometimes I call it God, I've called it Allah a few times, but I've connected, I've interacted with people who've had some really amazing, powerful experiences, and I've come to realize that it is objectively there. You can say what you want about perspectives, and life is what you want to each person, and that's true. You do create your own reality, and what you choose to accept becomes your reality. But there are objective experiences that you can have in your mind that all of these various world religions have talked about. And the key to getting there? Love and compassion. They all say that. They all say, well, okay, maybe not all. There's some that are trying to mislead people about what we need. There's this new book around called the Knowledge Book. For a few people that might set off some major red flags. For a lot of people, they're going to go, okay, there's a new book. This thing, my neighbor tried to recruit me into this cult. Yay big, gold leaf edges, really impressive purple book with a sunflower on the front. Supposedly brought to us by aliens who want to help us ascend and become more compassionate humans. They have this policy where you're supposed to write the entire book by hand in order to become a member of this group. They study very avidly together. They have requirements for recruiting and requirements for weekly activities and things. And you compare this to, say, the Church of Scientology or some various other organizations. It's kind of the same thing. They occupy your time and they make you too busy to actually do research and understand parts of the world and reality. And they try to say that everyone in the world needs to be part of our group and listen to us and not question. And I don't know if the Knowledge Book in particular is one of these groups that's really nefarious. They might truly just be the next version of a book from God, or their version of it, right? It's channeled by some lady in Turkey, and it talks about how all these books have been saying the same thing. We should all come together under this new book for the 21st century and the golden age. It was kind of an interesting experience to do some research into, but based on the person who introduced me to that particular group, it seems like it's likely a cult, and if that person is a good example for what a general member of that organization is, I don't really like what they're teaching them and how they want them to become better indoctrinators. Got a little sidetracked there. But bottom line is, there are a lot of moneyed programs. That's why I got sidetracked, because the money that is involved in making something like that happen. You can make a church in your local community and do everything that is good and godly and spiritual and magical and have these wonderful experiences with people and get everything that you need out of spirituality. You don't need a book or a national organization. What is good with national organizations, however, is they allow you to combat evil national organizations and to come together as people so that we can have a stronger voice than any individual disparate organization that may not be cooperating 100% with every other random disparate organization that's just doing their compassionate spiritual thing. So I do like the idea of organizing the world around compassionate spirituality. And honestly, I like a lot of the rhetoric from the book. The issue is there's some that is clearly misleading. There are experiences that I've had with this whole spirituality thing that have made me come to realize that, like I said, there are objective truths to this. And you read through that book and you realize, like, some of those objective experiences they're describing as sort of like the sort of stepping stones to this sort of higher entity that may be Lucifer for all I know. But because they do have a lot of sort of Masonic imagery all over the book and stuff, and it sounds very familiar compared to some of the stuff I'm reading about Blavatsky and some of these other things. So it is interesting that they are picking up the torch of this sort of timeless spirituality movement, but it could really be easily used for brainwash. And when they say things like you should be okay with being watched by spirits from above, that we are recording your every personality stuff in the record library of the universe. And, you know, those are things that I've heard from a lot of different texts, and I've even had my own brush with the Akashic records. But the way that they use the language in this particular book could very easily be used by some future, for lack of a better word, pope, to keep people in line. To allow people to be comfortable with the idea of being surveilled and not questioning when somebody gets disappeared because, oh, they were just being a bad person and they needed to work through whatever it is they needed to work. It's the same excuse they use in the Scientology. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. This is the anti-Independence Day special, so I'm trying to help us talk about what has been keeping us from being properly independent. The next thing I'd like to talk about is identity politics. Now, for some people, me just saying the word identity politics probably makes them feel a little bit angry. That's not very fair. You can't diss me for being proud of being a proud blank American, whatever group you happen to identify with, whether we're talking left or African American or it doesn't matter. Whatever group you happen to identify with, be proud. Be very proud. I'm just urging you to consider that identity politics has been co-opted and abused, much like these religions have been co-opted and abused. If you can convince people that this group over here is represented by these radicals, and then you don't need to worry about what actual, legitimate, compassionate human beings of this group might actually think. If you can convince people that just because someone shows up on Fox News, they must be a right-wing, Trump-supporting, moderate, crazy person, then you're never going to find out that Tulsi Gabbard is the compassionate, most progressive candidate who is trying to end wars and is actively speaking up against our evil alphabet overlords. Bottom line, I listen to YouTube based on the content, not based on who's talking to me. I keep in mind who's talking to me, but I don't know who Dave Rubin is, or I didn't know who Sean Hannity was for a minute until I did. Bottom line, when someone starts talking to you, you listen to what they have to say. And yeah, they might be a person who said some horrible things some other times and support some things that you don't like. Great. If they give you good information about something that you didn't already know about, and you can verify that that information is accurate, it doesn't matter the source. What matters is the content. If Tulsi Gabbard's going to go on Dave Rubin's show, which a lot of people don't like because I guess it's Dave Rubin, whoever he is, listen to what she has to say. She's talking about taking on Google. She's talking about the fact that identity politicking is allowing people to other people and not listen to them, or to hold on to opinions based on irrationality rather than having to actually defend them with logic. She's talking about the fact that they can use things like vote blue no matter who to keep whoever they want to be that blue candidate, because it doesn't matter who. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't be proud of what you identify as, but don't let those people who identify like you blindly lead you when they're wrong or they're not being ethically moral. That's what it comes down to. And I think that generally, we in America have a problem with that these days. I think that we need to be more independent. We need to listen to what people actually have to say. We need to recognize that in a lot of parts of this country, we've been basically castrated as far as our voting voice goes, because it is either a perpetual red district or a perpetual blue district, and either way, they know they're not going anywhere, so all they need to do is keep following the rules of the people who fund their campaign and give them money and got them there in the first place. And if they don't play ball, a scandal will break, because they've got scandals preloaded for all these people. They wouldn't be funding them if they didn't have a way to take them out and keep them in line. And then they'll bring in someone new. And that someone new will stay there because it's a red district and he's the red guy, so people can vote against him if they're blue, but it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. There are cities in this country that have been led by Democrats, supposedly for the people, for 100 years, and their poor are suffering worse than pretty much anywhere in this country. You can say the same thing about rural areas with some Republicans too. I'm not trying to suggest that it's only one party. I'm trying to suggest that if either party has the ability to hold on to a place without you needing to actually campaign for it, well, let's just say that there's a reason California is in a sorry state right now. Politicians don't need to campaign to California. It is assumed that if you're blue, you get California, and if you're red, you don't. So all they need to do is put the D next to their name, and they'll get your vote. So they're not worried about what people in California think. They're worried about what people in Iowa think. They're worried about what people in New Hampshire think. They're worried about what people in South Carolina think. And, that's a problem of our primary system to a degree. But we also need to recognize that this is really shooting ourselves in the foot here. We can't force the political establishment to give us a better candidate if they don't have to give us an option. Yeah. All right. Now, to wrap this talk up, we're going to do something that might get this video taken off of YouTube, but we're going to do it anyway because it is, what is it? Happy Anti-Freedom Day, guys! Woohoo! Today's the day. Back 18 years ago, when we lost our voice and gained a censoring spy master that's able to look in at any of us and is able to say that if anybody disagrees with them, they must be a supporter of terror, and or they might just get threatened or disappear. Or you just put them in a bunch of legal trouble, because it doesn't even need to be a good case. You can bring a case that is completely baseless against someone, and they still need to go into court to defend themselves against it. That costs money and time. If you've got more money and time than you know what to do with, and you control a lot of minds, you can just keep that person busy and ignore them. So, ever since that Patriot Act got signed into effect, our world has changed a little bit. It was already not great. I mean, if you believe that 3 bullets can cause 5 holes in a president, well, it's not great. The bottom line is it's not great. But things dramatically changed in 2001. Since then, people who disagree have not been allowed to speak. And the independent movement is gathering steam. We have a lot more support and power than we did. But the bottom line is, the world changed on anti-independence day. If we want it to change back, we're going to need to force it. We are going to need to speak up and use our voices to demand, to insist that the mainstream narrative that says that Tulsi Gabbard's not getting above 2%, that says Bernie's getting beaten by Warren, and that says Trump didn't have a chance to win in 2016 is crap. Because if you believe it, I talk on Twitter all the time. I'm tweeting from the trenches daily. And the number one thing I hear complaining about Tulsi Gabbard, really the only thing I hear about complaining about Tulsi Gabbard, aside from her BDS vote, which in my opinion is justified, whether you agree with it or not, also kind of related to this anti-Independence Day cast. Let's break down that BDS vote really quick. If she'd voted no, the establishment Jewish media, there is, I'm not saying that I'm just the group of people that tend to influence opinions within the Jewish community, already don't like Tulsi Gabbard. They already flame her all over Twitter. If she voted against the BDS, or for BDS, whatever, if she voted in the other direction, if she had been in favor of sanctioning, she'd never hear the end of it. That would have been political suicide. It would have, she can handle the smears that she's handling now because they're fairly baseless. That one is a nuanced enough issue that she has just lost anyone within that community who is not willing to listen to someone like me, which is, let's be honest, how many people can I talk to between now and May? So she voted the way she did, along with every other candidate, and I'd be willing to put really good money on the fact that Bernie would have voted for it too if he'd been forced to vote on it, but he didn't have to because he was in the Senate, not the House. But bottom line is he has supported Israel on basically every issue, so stands to reason he probably wouldn't have done anything different than Tulsi on this one. Anyway, the only complaint I hear about Tulsi besides BDS is that she's not well known enough. She's still only polling at 2%, dudes. To that I say, how dumb can you be? No offense, I love you guys. You're beautiful human beings, but don't fall for their games. They are trying to make a reality. They're trying to shift the world that we live in. That is what polls do. Polls are not conducted in order to try to figure out which candidate is doing well. Polls historically have almost always been used politically in order to try to influence people to believe a candidate is doing well. If they tell you that Trump's below Hillary, by more than 10% in all of 20, Trump got elected. Clearly, the polls are crap. So to put stake in the fact that, to put stake in polls as how we decide who gets into the debate is just beyond stupid. Because let's be honest, she's now polling above half the people on that stage almost in the unofficial polls. But then there's 27, 28 polls now that have her above 2%, which is the DNC threshold, but those aren't official polls because they're not sponsored and funded by the DNC, which has only done 4 official polls between the second debate and when she needed to qualify for the third debate after she slayed that second debate. Just might be a little bit fishy, but we can't believe those polls. We just can't. If we did, Warren would be our candidate, or Joe would be our candidate, or Hillary Clinton would be our president. So clearly polls are disingenuous, to say the least. So if your number one complaint about Tulsi is that she's not doing well in the polls, I urge you to consider that maybe that is a narrative that they're trying to push to dishearten people, to make people look towards any other candidate because they know they cannot handle Tulsi, and she has crazy momentum. She polled at 8% in Iowa the other day, 9% in New Hampshire. You cannot tell me she's not a serious candidate. People are crying over this woman. People are getting fired up over this woman. I've never been a social media person, and I now have a Twitter and a YouTube because of this woman. Now, say what you will. You might like your candidate too. He might fire you up too, whatever. But there's a lot of people in my boat that are becoming political because of this woman. If the main issue is making people actually turn up to vote so you can beat Trump's base, and or trying to pull people from Trump's base so it gets weakened, either one, Tulsi is the candidate. She's pulling people from Trump's base that no one else can. People think Bernie's a crazy socialist, but those same people are voting for Tulsi Gabbard. And if you think that because she has support on the right, she must be a moderate who's going to betray us or whatever, just listen to her talk. 20 minutes is all you need to know that she's the most legitimate, genuine, authentic people's candidate. And just because she has support from people on the other side, I mean, if a serial killer likes ice cream, does that mean I shouldn't like ice cream? Like, just because someone recognizes when something good is on this earth doesn't mean that that person must be evil because the person who supports them disagrees with you. We can all recognize what good is. Do you like ice cream? I like ice cream. And you know what? I will support Bernie in the general if I have to. But if we're going to be quite honest, I just think he is... No, I'm not going to get into that. This is not supposed to be this political of a talk. I'm sorry for making it go down that route. He's not shown quite the integrity and willingness to really go after the establishment men in charge that Tulsi is, and I'll just leave it at that. He's also got a few policies that I think Tulsi's got just some better ones on, and there's really not a single policy that Tulsi has or a single policy that Bernie has that Tulsi doesn't have a similar or better one for. So we can have that talk later if you'd like, but I think it's just objectively true. She is objectively displaying more integrity, and she objectively has a broader appeal among the different demographics out there. Bernie has name recognition, but if Tulsi had name recognition, hypothetically, if we're talking just general election here, two alternate realities, Bernie gets the nomination, Tulsi gets the nomination. Both of these alternate realities, it is these candidates running against Donald John Trump. Yes? We can agree on that? No issues here, because I've had people on Twitter who try to tell me like, well, you're not being realistic here because she's not doing well. But I'm not talking about the, sorry, I said primaries. In the general election. In the general election versus Donald Trump. You know what I was talking about, I'm hoping. But just because she's not doing well in the primaries doesn't mean she wouldn't destroy a general election if she got there. The point I'm making is if she gets the nomination, we all, as humanity, win. She's got the broadest appeal. She's a multi-spiritual Hindu Christian, a woman of color. She's appealing to the right, she's appealing to the independents, and she's appealing to the left that don't buy the mainstream spoon-fed crap. I mean, she's got basically the same platform as Bernie, but she's just a stronger messenger when you get right down to it. Oh. Well, I think that just about sinks in anyway, so... Happy Anti-Independence Day, guys. No, you know what? I'm not going to be derailed. But happy Anti-Independence Day, guys. What else? Oh, yes, that's right. I got distracted by political tangents. But the thing I wanted to talk about was actually terrorism. There's this awesome book by Webster G. Tarpley called Synthetic Terrorism about how we have manufactured worldwide violence, about how our war on I don't want to spell it again, has made more people militant. More importantly, about how there are prisons in this country that will recruit people who are willing to convert to Islam to go train at radical camps, to go across the pond and cause shit. If that surprises you, there's some news articles you can read, but more importantly, I really recommend that book by Webster G. Tarpley, Synthetic Terrorism. Because any 80 pages of that book will make you an informed, educated person able to debate the Anti-Independence Day conspiracy. And with that, I think that pretty much sums it up. We are, right. The thing I was building for, the reason why Tulsi Gabbard related to this particular situation is because she is being very honest about what radical Islam is. She's promoting an end to war, but also a responsible recognition that sometimes wars are necessary. Some people have used that to try to say, well, she's not anti-all war. She's the worst, right? And then you have people on the other side saying, oh, she wants to end wars. She must be a Assad apologist or whatever. So clearly you can't really win on this issue. If you're anti-war, the establishment is going to come after you real hard, and there's going to be a lot of smear ads for you. If you're pro-war, then every person in America is going to come after you real hard, and there will be smear ads for you. And somehow they've managed to do both. So let me clarify what Tulsi's position is on this issue. She has been asked, is there any war in our history that has been justified? Her answer was World War II. If you don't agree with that, I got some issue with you. There's a lot of conspiracy and stuff to do with World War II that I would love to talk to you about, but we can all probably agree that that was a war that, maybe didn't need to be fought. We could have avoided by historically doing other things, but compared to some of the stuff we've done since then, it was at least more justified. So based on that as her sort of standard for what a justified war is, I feel pretty safe in saying that the person who is so outspoken about ending these wars, who has spent 16 years as a veteran and has seen them firsthand, was a combat medic, and so she's seen not only war, but the worst parts of war, and has come back with the right message, not the, "Hoorah, America," but America's great, but we're being misled by people who tell us that there are WMDs in Iraq. So she's clearly trying to do very good on this. If we get her there, the world will become more peaceful. And to suggest that because she would potentially go to war with a country that is doing actual horrible things means that she's a war hawk is just silly. If, say, Russia invaded our soil tomorrow, which I think realistically it would probably more likely be China, but let's say Russia, since Russia, Tulsi, rah, 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 right? Let's say Russia invaded tomorrow. Wouldn't you want a president that's willing to go to war over that? If they're, boots on the ground, trying to nuke us, whatever. I would. Now, I don't want a president who's going to go to war over Iraq because we need more opium poppies, but that's a whole different issue. Okay. I think that's a pretty good Anti-Independence Day special. Good to see you guys. Happy Anti-Independence Day. Keep up the good protests. Hopefully them vests are around the country doing their good work. Man, I wish I was in DC right now. Love you guys. Kick some butt. Make some new friends. Do some good networking. Let's win this one. The world's going to be a better place. We're on the way. The bad people, some of them are getting arrested. I just remembered something very interesting about Schlepsy Epstein, but I won't get into that here. But yeah, we're headed towards a better future. We just need to make sure we don't mess it up by letting a corporatist like Andrew Yang get elected for our next president. Because at this point, whatever you think of Donald Trump, he's definitely not the worst president we've had in the last 2 decades. Might even be the best. I don't want to try to defend that position by any means, but we've got crooked Bill Clinton, we've got 2 Bushes, and we've got the renegade in chief. It's not exactly a steep competition. We've started no new wars, and the child killers are being arrested and whatnot. So I think the world could be in a much sorrier state than it's in right now. But most importantly, the number one reason why I am glad that we have an orange man in office is because he has forced people to recognize that we can't just stay autopilot politics as usual. That fake news really is a concern, and that there is a organized effort to lie to the American populace, especially during political campaign years. And that trump card is forcing the DNC to give us a real candidate for once. I didn't see Tulsi Gabbard in the campaign back in 2016. I didn't see Bernie having this good of a chance of getting the nomination back in 2016. They've had to flood the field because that was their only solution to making sure that Tulsi Gabbard didn't become our next president. And I don't think it's going to work. They've kept her out of the third debate. They've tried to silence her in the first debate. And I still truly believe that as long as we don't buy into the official narrative that she doesn't have a chance, as long as we have the bravery to vote for someone, even if she may not have a chance, she's going to be our next president. I don't know if it'll be this year or in 2024, but I do know that if they don't give us either her or Bernie Sanders, or maybe corrupt Andrew Yang, that Donald Trump will be our president until 2024. And I think that in 2024, Tulsi Gabbard cannot be stopped unless they kill her in the next 4 years. Which is why we need to vote her in now. 4 years is a long time for someone who sees combat to survive against that kind of nefarity. Now, it really depends on who gets put into office, because I do think that some corruption swamp nests are being drained, and I think that whoever comes next, especially if it's Bernie or Tulsi, could really do a good job of cleaning up, wrapping up with a nice bow, and making the world a much better place. So if Bernie was our president in 2020, I wouldn't be that worried about what happens to Tulsi after that. Especially if she's her vice president, I think that she's going to become our president whenever Bernie isn't our president. But I do believe that if any of the other Democrats that weren't Bernie or Tulsi gets that nomination, the world's going to go to hell. And not because the left is evil, because the people that have funded the Democratic Party, that are squawking so much that Trump's this horrible person that needs to be gone right now because he's doing these horrible things that might make us not be able to traffic kids anymore. Yeah, that's the reason. It's for the kids, guys. It is for people that are being abused, manipulated, and lied to. It is for an honest reporting of the way the world works, history, current events, politics, you name it. For all of that, that's what we're fighting for. And yeah, there's a lot of reasons not to like Donald Trump. More than anything, I'm really frustrated with just how much anger there is in the world right now, how much people are at each other's throats, how much we can't disagree, how literally there's two different worlds that people live in this country right now as far as facts and information goes, and it's really hard to have discourse with people when they literally think that reality and facts are crazy. But there's a lot of people in this country that are awake, and more waking up every day, and especially thanks to the what do I call it? Anti-Independence Day events. A lot of people have, you can't not notice that. A lot of people are, you can say, that's just conspiracy, crazy talk all you want, but when it's that in your face, what leads to that blatant lies leading us to war, for a lot of people, that was the breaking point. They're no longer able to just be spoon-fed and just accept it. They started doing their research, and they quickly realized that stuff's messed up. So now that there is a large populace of us in this country that are aware that stuff's messed up, we're demanding that someone fix it. If they don't give us a candidate who is going to fix it, then they're not going to get elected, because clearly the people who run the Democratic Party just want a figurehead. They want somebody blue in that chair so that they can do the same things that they've done for the past, hundreds of years, or at least several decades. Sorry. Hundreds of years for false flagging. I shouldn't say that word. Anyway, for at least a couple decades, whether you're talking about blue or red in office, they put a figurehead in office so they can keep doing stuff underneath that person. That's all it is. And if they want to put another figurehead in office, the American people aren't going to have it. We're not. I've been a Democrat my whole life. I didn't vote for Trump. I won't vote for Trump. But I'm also not going to vote for anyone else besides Tulsi or Bernie, because, quite frankly, we don't need another liar in office, reversing, getting these child chillers out of jail and stopping the wave that is locking them up. There are evil people who hurt and transport people and kids around this country and do unbelievably abhorrent things to them. And they're getting arrested. There were 500 people getting arrested in California the other month. 400 or so in Toronto. The Schmepsy Jepstein thing. It's a thing. If you don't see it, it's because they're not reporting it at all in the spoon-fed media, but it's totally a thing. Worldwide, evil people are being arrested. And that wave, that is a wave that we've needed for decades. If you've read The Franklin Cover-Up, sitting right over here, or if you're familiar with it, it was a Franklin Credit Union scandal that involved kids back in, I want to say, 90s, and led to some presidents and several politicians, and clearly bespoke of a much larger, broader ring around this country, and in fact around the world. That was back in the 90s. Nobody's done anything. Anybody who tries to speak up ends up in a pile of legal trouble and or getting disappeared. There's this body count going around, right? So the fact that something is finally being done about that, even if you don't believe that it has anything to do with Donald Trump, even if all he did was get into office and someone said, hey, do you mind if we go after these creepy people? And he went, yeah, do what you want. Even if that's all it was, that is still leaps and bounds. That is a miracle compared to what we've been dealing with for so long. I'm sorry. But truly, it's something else. It's magical. It's a miracle. It really is. It's what the world needs, because with human compromise, with the ability to hold something over somebody like that, you can control a lot of people. That is at least part of why these genius idiots with Harvard law degrees can't figure out how to do basic economics, because they're paid not to. And since that ball's gotten rolling, since there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not 130,000 sealed indictments now, quite a few, considering we usually have less than 1,000 sealed indictments sitting around at any time. 130,000 is a lot. Spokes of some good things. We need the next person to sit in that chair to keep that up. We cannot give up on this fight too soon. Everyone's life is at stake. We don't get a second chance at this. If it comes, if this conspiracy halfway breaks and they get to brush it under the rug as oh yeah, there was this dude Jeff and we got rid of him and now it's not a problem anymore. That's it. That's the end. That's, oh yeah, the pizza fence thing, it was just crap, because clearly it was just crap, because the dude shot up the pizza parlor and there was no one there, and then there's this guy and he's gone now, so now he's arrested, so everybody's done, right? There's no problem. We're done here, right? And then they keep up their network, they keep up lying to us, and as their censorship of the internet gets better and better, we're going to reach a point where anyone who wants to speak up against it is not going to be heard, and is going to be in significant danger of being disappeared. And maybe I'm a little bit too conspiratorial, and we'll figure out a way to get rid of them no matter what. But certainly we'll figure out a way to get rid of them if we don't put in someone who is going to halt the amazing efforts that have been happening in the past couple of years as far as ending the horrific things happening to kids. And that's why I campaign. I'm campaigning for anyone who's campaigning for the kids. Tulsi Gabbard campaigns for the kids. She's the only candidate I know who had a policy for trafficking on her website, until most likely she probably got too much flack and had to take it down. But she's very clearly addressing the root of every single problem that allows this to perpetuate. The censorship, she's talking about the poverty that creates both brain drain and people wanting to come into our country. She's talking about securing borders. And I think she's even directly talked about, people getting trafficked. People who are addicted to drugs and end up in some compromised situations. Bottom line, I know this is an important issue to her. I know that she's aware that this is an issue that exists. When you compare that to candidates like Andrew Yang, who want to give the entire country $1,000 a month, every month, which is a great idea. I love UBI. I think UBI was a great idea when it came up with 120 years ago. I've liked UBI for at least a decade now. I think it's awesome. But when you give people who make money off of controlling people's lives and moving them around, well, we could also probably throw in cults like Scientology and Mormonism and some of these other groups that abuse their wealth, buy a lot of land, and hold a lot of political influence. What happens when we give these cults and these rings of horrible people $1,000 per person every month? Money is what lets them do what they do. People would not want to go out and, snatch children if they weren't getting paid really well to do it. The bottom line is this is very profitable, and it's also controlled by money. If you take the money out of the ring collapses. If people aren't getting paid, they're not trafficking. That's how that works. That is how many a drug trade has ended. So, targeting their funding mechanism is important. Recognizing that not talking about trafficking at all in 170 policies, recognizing that when in your book you mention the cartels for half a paragraph, just long enough to talk about how they're lacing our drugs with fentanyl and then talk about our drug addicts, but never again touch on the fact that there are these cartels moving both drugs and people, it tells me that you don't care about the kids. It tells me that you don't care about people suffering. Or maybe don't even know. I'm not sure which one's worse, to be honest, but either way, I think that your policies to reunify the press, or for fake news police, where the people who determine what is fake are nominated by industry, is entirely counterproductive towards allowing these whistleblowers who help protect these victims and expose these horrible people. If you don't allow them to have a voice, to be protected, we're all dead. We're all dead. We are all dead. Even if we're not physically dead, we are spiritually dead if we do not do something about this. Now, if you don't think those are censorship policies, most of you can probably recognize that plan to reunify the press is not good news, but I've been talking to people within the Twitter trenches that do think that he's not trying to censor people. What are you talking about? Consider the German socialist nationalist movement before World War II, during World War II, whatever. They liked to have a fake news police, or a news police. We won't call it fake news police because, well, actually, no, I think they did call it fake news police. They were burning anyone whose books they didn't agree with. Now let's look at communist Russia or censor state AI China. How do they like to censor their people? They've got a nice reunified press, don't they? Well, I guess communist Russia also used fake news police, but bottom line is these are the tools of the censors. And what does censorship allow them to do? Everything evil. That is what tricks us into going into wars. That is what keeps us, bashing heads together about whether someone should be able to abort at 6 months or 9 months or after the kid's born. Let's be honest, every single person pretty much agrees on this issue, unless you are morally obligated to say that all life is precious and we shouldn't ever do it. But to that, I would argue that since we are overpopulated, and since that kid is often likely to end up in a home where he's not getting the love and attention he deserves, and might end up being I don't want to say a broken adult, but a psychologically damaged person when they grow up, you might be doing a better service to the world by not allowing them to be born just yet. Having that spirit be born into a different body, because that is what happens. It's not as though that spirit doesn't get to exist. It tries. Maybe this wasn't the time, and it comes back in later. I've read several books that is what happens. You're not killing. You are ending like life in the biological sense, but in the spiritual sense, it continues. But more importantly, people should be allowed to do what is best for them. If you're going to have a kid that you begrudge, that you don't fully appreciate, that you were reticent to have, that kid is not as likely to get a full and loving environment when they grow up. It's just not. You should be a parent when you're ready to be a parent. And I personally could never do it. I could never have my girlfriend do it. But I recognize that there are times when it needs to happen, because, girls should not be forced to have the kid of the person who raped them. That kid is going to be a constant reminder of their pain, and that kid is going to take on and embody that pain as a physical malady of who they become as an adult. And is that really better than letting that soul go be reborn as someone else's kid, or as that person's kid at a later time period? I don't think so. Now, on the flip side of this, we have people who basically want to traffic in kid organs, so they're okay with abortions at any time. That's messed up too. I think that, again, I agree with Dulce on this one. Within the first 6 months, sure. But late term abortions, kind of gross. If you couldn't have made that decision within the first 6 months, you should probably just carry it to term. Unless, of course, it's a medical hazard for you to do so. Again, I think Tulsi nailed it here. She's got a nuanced and educated, intelligent opinion on basically every issue. She kicks butt. But that wasn't the point. The point is, how do I get on abortion again? Right. Point is, we end up bashing heads on these nitpicky issues that, for the most part, wherever you may fall personally on how you feel, we can recognize that there are 8 billion of us on here, and it's not my right as a human being to police how everybody behaves. As long as they're not damaging society. You can make your choice. You can live in a community of people who all make that same choice as you, but forcing that choice on everyone is not freedom. Nor is it really moral, because you cannot tell me that 100% of all cases that that's the right choice. You ask the higher spirit, what am I supposed to do? And you feel it right here. And whatever you feel, you do it. And if that person is being told by the Holy Spirit that now is not the time, if she feels so much anxiety from this thing in her womb that she knows that this is going to ruin her life and ruin that kid's life, you cannot tell me that the moral, godly option is to ignore the Spirit's words and do what a law told you to do. Do what you are morally compelled to do, but don't require everyone else to follow your rules if they're not doing anything damaging. Nobody who is, I think generally we can probably find a good middle ground on this one that most people will be happy with. There might be, again, a few people who aren't, but I don't think that they have enough of a representation in this country to cause as much of a bottleneck as they have on this issue. More importantly, I think that this issue gets way more play than some of these other issues that Tulsi Gabbard is talking about that are vitally important to our planet right now. And I think that the sort of divisive identity politicking, if you don't believe in this, you're not a progressive type talk, is what allows that to happen. So, let's focus on the real issues. Let's pick a candidate who focuses on the real issues. Let's make sure that whoever's in the office isn't going to smoke screen us with 170 policies of things that make us feel good and not talk about the things that are vitally important to our world. And with that, happy Anti-Independence Day, guys. Sorry for going a bit long.